Start the recording. Welcome everybody to this second Innovative Instruction Technology Grant webinar. We're highlighting the projects that were funded this past academic year. Typically, we ask those who receive IATG grants to present at the SUNY Conference on Instruction and Technology. However, due to the pandemic, it was canceled this year. And so I really wanted those who had projects to be able to talk about what they did for their project and spread the word throughout the system. You know, an important component of the IATG program is that dissemination across SUNY so that other folks from other campuses can learn about the projects and maybe adopt them on their campus. So my name is Chris Price. I'm the Academic Programs Manager for the SUNY Center for Professional Development. Joining you from Rochester, the CPD is in Rochester, in Syracuse. We're gonna get started in just a minute. If you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I will monitor the chat, but we're gonna go pretty quickly. We have 4 presentations scheduled and we will end at 3 o'clock. We did have a little bit of a shift in the schedule, so Anna Joffrey from SUNY Poly will be joining us to present at 2:45, and we're gonna kick things off with Erin Kearney from UB now, and she'll go to 2:15. So Erin, take it away.
Great, thank you, Chris. Thanks so much. I'm gonna just get my screen shared here to everybody and share just a few slides with you as we go along. Okay, getting somewhat more adept at this. Is this all right for everyone if I do the slides this way? And I'll just manually advance them. Let's see.
It looks all right, but you know, it's usually if you could do the presentation.
Yeah, let's do it this way.
Better.
Okay.
Yeah,
all right. Okay. So, and I'll try to be real mindful of the time as it's short. So, my name's Erin Kearney. I'm from the University at Buffalo. I'm an associate professor in the Department of Learning and Instruction. I'm a teacher educator in Buffalo, and my own discipline is in world languages and English as a second language. But I'm also the associate chair of the department charged with development of new programs and curriculum. And in the last 18 months or so, we've been involved in a pretty significant period of innovation around our approach to teacher education. And so the project that you're going to hear about is part of that bigger picture. We're coming to the end of the first year, the inaugural year of a residency program. So we're coming at teacher education in a different way in that respect. And we're also really integrating a lot of elements to our teacher education that have to do with this concept of professional vision. And so what that means is that we're starting to integrate quite a lot of video-based analysis into our teacher education programs, as well as virtual reality. The piece that I'm going to talk with you about today is more video-based. Professional vision is the idea, and I've got a reference here for anybody who's interested from Chuck Goodwin. The idea with professional vision is that all professions, all disciplines have their profession-specific way of looking at the world. And so they have certain domains that are of interest to them. In teaching, this is largely classrooms and school environments. But there is a certain way of looking, an interpretive frame from the very perceptual level, the apprehension kind of level, to the idea of interpreting in a sort of more abstract kind of and conceptual kind of way. How do you interpret what you see and make sense of it? So all fields have this professional vision, and the question of any kind of professional education then is how do you get novices to develop professional vision? Well, educational scholars have picked up this concept as relevant and have offered a core practices cycle, and we're just really interested in the observation phase that you see here at the top of the figure. But the idea is that there are core instructional practices, for example, leading a discussion. Leading a discussion is something that is useful to all teachers. It might look different in a mathematics classroom than it does in a social studies classroom than it does in a Spanish classroom, but it's a core instructional practice. And so the work of teacher education then, using tools like video or teacher educator modeling, or even looking at lesson plans to try to uncover the planning aspects of this core practice, is to help novices to see what are the relevant features of that instruction, how it is built up, and how it's connected to the specifics of a classroom environment. So how is it linked to teacher-student relationships, that moment of interaction? So the really context-based realizations of these practices, as well as sort of a broader understanding of what the practices are and how they're constructed. So this is what guided the project. The project was about then introducing two linked innovations, the teacher education pedagogy around professional vision, so the concept, as well as the tool that was helping us to pursue that concept. So Edthena is a video-based platform specifically designed for education, where users can either access an existing library of instructional practice, so videos that others have uploaded. It's called the MEDEX library, and it's was funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to collect a whole lot of classroom video. The other way to use Edthena is to have teacher candidates upload their own videos. So on this screen, you can see these were some of my own teacher candidates this year in world languages. And you can see some of the videos that they uploaded from their own spring teaching experiences before we were all released from face-to-face teaching and moved to a different environment. So although it says April here, they were recorded before that, and that's just the last time I think they were commented on. So the way that we use these, this is another view to give you a sense of what the Edthena feed looked like. As we started to work with their own videos of teaching to focus in on particular instructional practices and to develop their professional vision. On a specific video page, what you would see is the teacher candidates video, and then you'll see a whole bunch of hash marks here and a plus sign where as you're watching the video, the group that it's shared with can add annotations. And this became really, really integral to developing that perceptual ability that I noted. So I would mark things. You have a coach here, Ling, who was making marks in the video, and you can even see in her comment that she's drawing their attention to teacher modeling as a specific element of practice that they can be paying attention to and how it links to student engagement. So we used it on the level of drawing attention to certain features, and we also supported specific analytic interpretations by drawing attention to these features. And lastly, we were using this as a way of developing a common language for talking about practice. So while the teacher candidates did not start out using the same sort of descriptive terminology as the teacher educators, you have a good example here of how she's pulling the teacher candidates in the direction of teacher language. In our own discipline, we started talking about learning the language of language teaching, and that was part of what we were doing here too. So you see things like modeling, think alouds, these are all part of the vocabulary of teaching. One last feature on Edthena that was very, very helpful to us was that once the videos were uploaded, used in group discussions for sort of group analysis and development of shared understanding of the instructional practices, we could also use this as a way of providing feedback to the teacher candidates along specific lines. And so we used different frameworks. They're called frameworks in Edthena, but really they're rubrics for performance. And so here you have at left an example where learning environment, analyzing teaching effectiveness, and using knowledge of students during instruction were specific targeted areas. Edthena also allows you to track that over time and to show individual or cohort development. Okay, I think I'm nearing the time limit here. So with the last minute or so, I'll just draw your attention to a few lessons learned that might be of interest to others. So this innovation was really a dual innovation for our teacher educators and our teacher candidates who were learning how to learn teaching in this way. So it was the teacher education pedagogy that was new, as well as the technological side of it. There were some adopters of both, but I would say had we had a little bit more ability to build up the teacher education pedagogy, I think we would have seen a bit more adoption across our group of teacher educators. There were some who really got it and took it and ran with it, and will continue to build in this direction, but it was sort of lots of change all at once. The second point here that's become very important to us is that the repositories of video of professional practice that are starting to get built through platforms like this is really, really important. So for individual teachers, the personal repository became immediately practical when they were forced to leave schools. Some of them had not filmed instruction specifically for their performance-based assessment for the state, for the EdTPA it's called, and they were able to come back to Edthena and use the repository of video they had gathered across the year for that really high stakes assessment because it was there. Institutionally, these repositories are really, really important for us to continue working on our teacher education pedagogy and to track our own progress in how we're dealing with different instructional practices and which ones need more attention, or maybe we can come at it in a different way. They're also extremely valuable for research. Research into development of professional vision is and core practices is quite popular in educational research right now. So having these repositories is very useful. Okay, and another sort of takeaway from this is that the video-based platforms that we have that look at really complex work in professional work like teaching or lawyering or doctoring, these can be really, really important things as we start to think about when we don't have direct access to normal or traditional clinical or practical experiences, what sort of alternatives do we have? And so these can be really rich resources for us as we're thinking about that. We're already planning for this fall to have this video-based observation as our alternate observation, as well as some of the VR work we're doing available to our incoming teacher candidates. Okay, so I hope what I've done is sparked some ideas about professional vision and how this might be achieved in video, and I'm very eager to hear what you have to say and if you have questions about what I've presented.
So yeah, so feel free to put a question in the chat or just open your mic and ask her indirectly.
Okay, I have a question. You said there is a way to annotate the video. Is it only the instructor or the students also?
It's anybody who's in the group, so they were commenting on each other's as well. There's sort of a feed of video that is open to the group, and then there's also a function in Edthena where you can submit what they call explorations. It's essentially an assignment, and in those configurations, it's just with the instructor, so you can do a more private teacher candidate instructor or sort of one-on-one conversation, but as soon as somebody uploads their video, which they were really adept in doing quickly. The teacher candidates used an app on their phone, so they would record on their phone and then upload directly to Edthena, so it comes up in the feed and others have the ability to comment on it then. But it's all private in the group, not out to everybody who has Edthena.
Okay, are you gonna give us like a training session about that, or just like general information?
I'm sorry, what?
Like, are you gonna train us how to do it, or just like general information?
So I'll answer that for you. Unfortunately, we don't have time for that, Samir. We have 3 more presentations in the hour. So, but if you want to reach out to Erin directly, I'm sure she might be willing to give you some tips.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? We still have a couple more minutes. Don't see any in the chat.
I guess I'll just mention that this idea of professional vision has been really interesting at UB. We have started a group around VR, use of VR, and we're calling it the UB workshop. And the idea is that, this idea of developing professional vision in lots of different fields. And so using video representations, VR representations to learn things like in trauma surgery, unpacking the practice, talking about the practice to be able to orient to what is important in the environment and then to think about how that might guide future action as sort of the intermediate step between just looking at something and talking about it and then doing it. It's a little bit more of an embodied kind of experience. And so we've had some really interesting conversations about what it means to develop professional vision for surgery or management or the law. It's been really fascinating.
That's great. So thanks so much, Erin. We're going to take a shift now to Sarah, and she's going to talk about ePATIENT. And Sarah's bringing us in. Sarah?
Hello, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and get my screen shared. And I have two of my co-presenters on today. Okay, good. We have the right one here. There we are. We will be, the three of us will be presenting. I'll have them jump in during their parts. But today we're going to talk about ePATIENT, which is something we've been working on. This is our second round of winning the IITG award this year, and pretty cool what we've come up with over the past 2 years. So I'm Sarah Lynch. I work at the School of Pharmacy at Binghamton. Fritz and I work closely together. He's now at Canisius, but we both work together at Binghamton's School of Pharmacy. And then this would not have happened without the efforts of Tim and Adam, who both work in Binghamton ITS. We also have Patty on the call today for another project, but she provided lots of advising, and she does star in our short video that we have. And then Andy Simons from Buffalo has provided a little support as well. So first, just a little bit of terminology just to orient everyone to what we're talking about today. Basically, ePATIENT is an educational electronic medical record. So it's for use in the classroom, but it simulates what students will experience in the real world. And the reason why electronic medical records are kind of a big deal is they're widely used in the healthcare setting. The goal was actually in 2014 to have all healthcare providers use them. They also play an important role in promoting communication about a patient through the sharing of diagnostic information, medical lists, and provider notes. So really it allows different providers at different places to be able to access information that other providers have given. So for example, I could go to my dermatologist and then I could go to my primary care doctor the next month, and my primary care doctor, as long as they're in the same healthcare system and share the same EMR, can both see that information, which should theoretically reduce the number of tests, questions I'm asked, that kind of thing. Interprofessional education is kind of a hot topic in the healthcare field now, and coming from the pharmacy world, something we're interested in. A lot of the accrediting bodies are requiring it, and the majority of current IPE exercises, at least here at Binghamton, tend to occur live with all healthcare professional students in the same place at the same time, working through a clinical case. So you might start seeing where we're going with this. I will pass it off to Fritz.
All right, so our problem was that we had limited opportunities for team-based interprofessional collaboration in the health sciences. In a large school such as UB that has medicine and pharmacy and everybody on campus, there are a lot of opportunities for in-person communication, but we didn't have that at Binghamton. So we had to come up with a unique way to create additional IPE experiences for our students. So when we're working in and on the same campus, geography is a fantastic thing. You have everybody there, but scheduling becomes a problem. So all of a sudden, trying to get more than one set of students in the same place at the same time is, as most of you know, if you try to schedule anything, the largest barrier of completing any event. And then if you have the issue of, okay, Binghamton doesn't have a medical school, now we have to partner with upstate, trying to get our students to them or their students to us into the same classroom is always an issue. So that's where we were going with the with our next step. So our solution was ePATIENT, our online EMR, an asynchronous platform where students from different locations can work together on the same patient at the same time. Well, not even at the same time. They can work at the same time and or asynchronously. So it's an exciting platform. So you ask, can't you use a commercial EMR? Well, you technically could if you were in a hospital setting or a setting that already has an EMR. The issue is they're very expensive. You could purchase licensing. There are management and overhead issues, overhead of creating and recreating cases. The issue there is EMRs work great for what they're supposed to. As soon as you have a patient and you add a record, that record is always there, so you can't reset it. If you want to rinse and repeat and run the same case again, you have to create another file and then another patient. And to do that over and over and over again is really time and cost prohibitive. And of course, don't educational EMRs exist? Some of them do. Training EMRs, they're expensive. There's a pretty large cost for students, at least $100 a year per student. Each year they have to re-up their subscription, so the cost just keeps building for them. And typically training EMRs are really solo professions. So it's individuals working on a case. You don't very often get to work in a team in any of the existing training EMRs.
So our vision was to create an online educational platform where our students could participate as part of a team, which we'll refer to as interprofessionally or IP here, and effectively remove some of those scheduling and geographical issues. We also wanted to overcome some of those limitations that we recognize with existing commercial and training EMRs. So we wanted the students to be able to work in interprofessional teams, but remotely. We wanted a realistic way for faculty to share cases. You could just say a Google form could work, but we wanted it to be realistic. We wanted it to be affordable, open access. We were hoping everyone in, SUNY could use this eventually, and that would promote collaboration across schools as well. So this is a little flow chart that goes through the process, for example, and I am actually going to allow, we have a little video set, and I'm actually going to play that to allow you to see how the process plays out, because I think that paints the best picture of what this does. So give me just a second. I'm gonna get that up on my screen. And if someone could pipe in if this doesn't work, that would be great.
Alberto Jimenez is a 78-year-old man presenting to the emergency department with respiratory symptoms, including a cough that developed 3 days ago and is becoming worse. Over the last 24 hours, Mr. Jimenez has also developed confusion and shortness of breath. His wife convinced him to come to the emergency department today to get checked out. As the admitting team, it is your job to perform a physical exam and to order, dispense, and administer any medications that Mr. Jimenez will need.
This was probably the most simple version of what we could do using the EMR. But I hope that gives you a good idea. And I'm going to let Tim speak briefly about, he's our tech guru, speak briefly about how it was set up.
So, hi, I'm Tim. So what we're looking at here is kind of the general architecture of how the ePatient application works. When we first started working on this, we kind of built it in such a way that it was really only accessible to people that were Binghamton University faculty and students. But now it's out on AWS, which is out in the cloud on Amazon Web Services. It actually integrates correctly with individual schools, single sign-on. So if you could come in from Binghamton University or Buffalo, or even if you just have like Google, email address, you can authenticate with the ePatient application. So the idea is that this truly can be something that we could actually collaborate with on the same scenario across multiple different universities and institutions, really anywhere in the world, in a synchronous or an asynchronous environment. So that's really something that's pretty different. And then this is really just kind of showing the code a little bit. Obviously, there's thousands and thousands of lines of code that was written custom for this application. But generally, it's written in like PHP, MySQL, if people are familiar with that kind of stuff. I won't get into any more detail than that, but that's what it is.
Okay, and so basically just to wrap up, it's got a basic intuitive EMR structure. We have the option to build cases on the back end or if students work on the front end. So theoretically faculty would build the case and then push it forward to the students to work through it, add items, use items to make decisions, that kind of thing. It does have workflow mechanisms, which the video I think demonstrates well. We can assign cases to a specific team so they can work together online. It's accessible through a single sign-on. And we do have a chat function as well, which you noticed in the video, kind of mimicking the ability of phone calls. So when asynchronous work is happening, that can be the case. We just have a summary here of the target audience, but basically summarizing the healthcare professions across SUNY institutions or everywhere. And so I think what I just want to end on is that this is something we're hoping to roll out this year, especially as we get more into the need of having to do things remotely. This will allow our students, even within the pharmacy school, to work on activities where they're all kind of working on the same case together instead of working independently on separate activities, just kind of more mimicking what a real world medical environment is. And that is all. We'll open it up for questions. If you have any comments.
Questions? I don't see any in the chat. Do you have questions? Feel free to use your mic too. So sorry, if a campus is interested in using it, they contact you, or how's that? Or it's gonna be rolled out. How's that gonna work?
That is something we're still working on, but I think the thought is that we'll start working with some of the institutions we work with closely as far as that goes, and then hopefully can figure out some sort of mechanism for distributing, working with our CLT or Center for Learning and Teaching here or some other system to let people know about this. That's definitely another barrier is actually developing that collaboration. You can have the tool, but then the actual process of developing those teams and the ideas is another challenge. I see a question, was the video example a time that all health schools ran the activity together synchronously? That one, we created that scenario for the video, but I think the idea was that it could have been an asynchronous one, so we could have had the nursing students working to collect some information from a patient, then the pharmacy students or the medical provider analyzing that information, making a clinical decision, the pharmacist verifying that information and filling or dispensing the medication, and then the nursing student going ahead and administering that. So kind of on the most basic level. Obviously there's much higher levels as well for those of you who are in the medical field and are probably thinking of different ways we could use as well.
And going back to the how do the other schools use it, I believe, and Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, they could actually have their own installation on campus if they wanted, rather than having to tie in what we have existing.
Yep, so this is everything we've seen is open source. It's out actually on GitHub if you want to check out Binghamton University's GitHub page and stand up your own server. With that said, we understand that a lot of people don't want to sit around and build up servers and stuff like that. And sometimes working with your local IT folks can be a little bit challenging. So with that said, if you want to engage in the collaborative notion of this, or if you really just want to avoid setting it up locally, Binghamton University has that, and it's ready to go. And in theory, it should be relatively straightforward to integrate your single sign-on with our instantiation of the platform.
Any other questions? Well, that was really impressive, I have to say. Really.
Video was all Fritz, so.
Really great. Well, thank you both so much. I think we're going to just switch gears. We're staying at Binghamton now. Lori and Patricia, so step up to the plate.
Hi, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. You all see my screen?
Yep.
Perfect. I'm going to move you guys off just a little bit. Welcome. I'm Lori Sprague. I'm going to be presenting today the development of the immersive virtual reality scenario for increasing emotional intelligence, empathy, and self-efficacy in healthcare education. Forward. My team, the Binghamton University team, is myself. I'm the Assistant Director for the Innovative Practice Center here at the Decker School of Nursing. Patty Ruther is also going to be presenting with me today. Patrick Leiby is also available for any questions that you might have. And then those were the rest of our colleagues that we worked with Binghamton University. We also collaborated with Jamie Murphy from SUNY Delhi, Janie Dennison from the college at Brockport, and Sue Seibold-Simpson from SUNY Broome Community College. We were awarded the IITG Award too. So just to quickly give some background, simulations have significantly transformed healthcare education. They provide unique experiences that equipped our learners in those high-risk, low-frequency simulations, improving skill, knowledge, and acquisition. They also increase clinical judgment. So simulation is a really safe environment for us to come and practice. However, empathy training is often not addressed, and so the implementation of alternate pedagogies for teaching empathy is a means to improve healthcare outcomes and enhance patient experiences, and simulation is an excellent modality in being able to do empathy training. Studies have suggested that patients who encounter empathetic providers describe greater satisfaction, and they do much better with treatment adherence. So immersive virtual reality simulations are emerging, and they do provide that standardization. They are highly realistic, and empathy training can be done using those types of modalities. The user can experience firsthand the patient perspective through auditory and visual cues. And in the past, VR has been really challenging to use, and it requires a lot of technology. It's really limited in its abilities. The anticipated goal for this was to develop immersive and impactful simulation experiences that were also really capable of widespread dissemination. Our overall purpose for the project was threefold. So the first was to develop the patient-centered scenario. We wanted to test the immersive virtual reality education content, and we wanted to see if it increased learners' emotional intelligence, empathy, and self-efficacy. We collaborated with the other nursing educators starting last summer in June. I wanted to identify objectives and developed storyboards. We decided to use a vaping scenario that we had created. We had experts review it for content validity, and we hired actors that had some healthcare experience, and we provided them scripts as well as character development. The mock hospital room was in the Innovative Simulation Practice Center, and that was chosen as the site to do the recording of the videos. There were 2 4-minute videos that we recorded. One was a standard video recording of the patient themselves, giving a description of their history, and the other was using the 360 technology for the immersive case. So the scenario was a 16-year-old, relatively healthy young girl who was recently admitted to the ICU with an unexpected respiratory distress, was intubated, and has not been doing very well. The video is filmed from the patient's perspective, and the mother is sitting at the bedside very upset, not really sure what's happening with her daughter. The healthcare team is entering into the room for their morning rounds, and then the mother is now delivered some more ominous information. So YouTube was provided the platform for us to do the dissemination. We informally tested the VR using inexpensive VR headsets. We tried the cardboard, we tried the plastic. We also talked and collaborated with the Digital Scholarship Center. So we wanted to initially start it in person. So we did use their site for the computer-based VR system that they had. They have the motion sensors. So we required some scheduling with them. They had a person that was designated to help us with this. And we did one student at a time. Where there were some concerns, obviously scheduling was a bit of a challenge, but we also were concerned at that point, prior to COVID, about infection control and having our students use the headsets again and again. Once COVID hit, we had to stop testing on campus. We were, prior to COVID, able to test this lecture simulation. So we tried a bunch of different types of plastic inexpensive headsets. We liked the Biotech because they were collapsible. We were able to wipe them down in between users who wanted. They were pretty reasonable in cost, and they each had their own carrying case, so they were easy to transport. We informed students prior to the event to bring their smartphones, bring a set of headphones with them, and then we posted the link on our LMS, which we didn't give to them until the simulation actually started in the classroom. So once the simulation started in the classroom, we asked them to connect to the link that we provided, and all 60 of the students did the exact same simulation and experienced the exact same thing at the exact same time. So this event was a full simulation that all of our students were able to go through, and it took about 15 minutes, and we were able to do debriefing right at that time, right after. We also collaborated with SUNY Delhi. So students use cardboard VR headsets, or they watched it on their computer, or they were able to use their own VR, an inexpensive VR headset they may have had. It was part of a module that they were given. So they were able to watch the video anytime that they wanted during that module, and then go ahead and answer their discussion board questions however they seemed fit. So that's how they utilized the debriefing, and they focused it more on the communication piece for that course. It just happened that COVID hit, and so we decided to spring onto this and use this for our own students here at Binghamton University. We also shared this with Brockport, so they were able to use it as well. So we assigned readings focusing on empathy and lung injury. We provided an iBook for our students that had all of that information and instructions in that for them. So students were able to either use their own inexpensive headsets, or gave them links to utilize or to construct their own DIY cardboard headsets, or they could just watch it on their computer if they didn't have either of those. And so faculty were then able to debrief them via Zoom synchronously. So that was very helpful. It was an excellent activity for our students who no longer had clinical sites. This just added to that experience. We did collect some data along the way, so we've gotten some IRB approval for the campus pilot study to assess feasibility. We wanted to find out what baseline empathy data was for our traditional students at that point, and then we also were able to collect some online feasibility assessment data. Preliminary results were pretty good. We informally had heard students, tell us how great they thought it was a wonderful tool. They thought it was terrific to be able to use. Overwhelmingly, it was pretty positive. There was, a comment, as you can see, well done, but not perfect. But I think the last quote there that we highlighted, it really kind of hits exactly what we were hoping this project would do. It felt as if I was really in the room and experiencing the emotions of the patient and the mother, and that's exactly what we were hoping for. So in conclusion, you guys again, sorry, you're on my PowerPoint. Implementation of using a stationary computer, it's definitely doable, but it presents some challenges. So scheduling was required a lot of finesse. There was time restrictions where we had one student coming in at a time. And so we also had to be thinking about infection control. And to be perfectly honest with you, now with COVID, I'm not sure how we would go about utilizing those types of VR headsets. It would require a lot more infection control practices that would need to go into place for that. We found that we were able to widely disseminate this to the classroom and to the online user. It provided that standardized simulation that we hope for all of our students. As I mentioned, it really, informal results revealed that students really liked this. They thought it was unique and it was a different way to do a simulation. And it was overall, there were some students who didn't understand all of the instructions, but felt it was pretty easy to use. And that's pretty much it. So thank you. The link to the video is here if anybody is interested in reviewing it and watching it.
Do you, can you put it in the chat?
Sure.
We can't
Do
click
that.
on the screen.
I
Can see it later.
maybe my let me see. Let me stop sharing and then I can.
Yeah, if you stop sharing. Okay. Any questions?
Yeah, Lori, this is Fritz, formerly at Binghamton. One of my issues with VR, especially in healthcare, was trying to get everybody through the actual process. And it sounds like you guys have figured out the dissemination issue. Can you explain that to me a little bit more? Because that's been my biggest barrier and why I haven't bought in 100% yet.
Yeah, so both Patty and Patrick are with me as well, so chime in you guys whenever you like. But yeah, that was what we basically found the same thing. So, we've been using different types of products where we have our students coming in one at a time, and that did present a lot of challenges. And so Patrick would probably be the best person to talk about the platform because it did take him a little bit of time. We wanted to find the best platform that was going to be used, and so I think YouTube was the platform that he decided was the best at the time. Patrick, do you want to?
Yeah, so I mean, really, it came down to using some of the other simulations that are out there. We realized that all of the motion and things like that in VR weren't necessarily adding that much, and they were increasing the complications. And so if you can just kind of shoot it from that first person perspective, we used Insta360 cameras. And then posting it on YouTube, you can just use your phone as the delivery method. And then with cheap cardboard headsets or plastic headsets, it's really, the barrier is much lower to, to get 60 students doing it all at one time or have it as an online thing that they have to, an online assignment.
Is the next step to add more auditory cues, or difficult visual cues to help people understand glaucoma or, tinnitus or whatever?
What we find is, what we found in looking at the VR products, I'm sorry, I'm interrupting guys, but is that really VR is trying to do more than it's ready for in an easy way. They're trying to add too much tactile stuff. They're trying to add, they're not letting the platform do what it does best. And what it does best is immerse you in the situation that you want them to experience. So I think that at the moment, it's best to immerse them for a little bit into the story and then do the other part of it, do what you're talking about, the other part of the teaching as your learning module progresses. We just find that, the short stories that you immerse them into, the more you try to add, the more it distracts from the story, and then they're stuck in the technology of it. So that's what we found anyway.
Okay, thanks.
I think that I have the right link in there. It's always wondering, I'm hoping I put the right link in. So.
Any other questions? That was really helpful to hear, especially Patty's last comment. We've gotten a lot of proposals lately to IITG for VR projects, and so I'm glad that we have a lot to learn from what you did.
Well, can I actually, and Erin had sent me, all professional education would benefit a lot from developing empathy. Erin, I have to tell you that is one of the things that we have talked a lot as a team about. not to self-divulge too much, but I have a child who has a lot of anxiety. And so I think it would be really important for, for educators to kind of see what a child who may not be experiencing, may not overtly be showing these kinds of signs, what is going on in their mind. And from the beginning of this, we had been talking about this would be great for educators to have, be great for, a lot of different professions, right, that are going through things right now. This would be a terrific mode for a lot of individuals.
Yeah, I think your adoption of the first person perspective is really, really powerful. We've done a little bit with highly multilingual classrooms, and most teachers are white, middle-class, monolingual women. And so to understand and experience that is far from their own is really, really important in what we do in professional education. So totally agree. And so we've not filmed anything from the perspective of the student. It's often from the perspective of the teacher, but in line with the sorts of things you're doing, I think that's where our own library of VR modules will go.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for sharing that.
I think you can get a lot of good continuing education out of this too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Great, thank you. Okay, we're going to turn to our last presentation now. Anna, are you there?
Hello.
Hi.
So
Hey
I'm
there.
going
Hey,
to...
hello.
Hello?
Hi.
Yeah, I'd like to share my screen, but I need to, I seem to be blocked from that.
I made you the co-host, so you should be able to if you go to the green button at the bottom and hit share screen.
Okay, yeah, there we go. Hello, I'm Anna Joffrey. I'm at SUNY Polytechnic University. And today, so what I'm going to do instead of going through a PowerPoint, I just want to show you this website that we created as one of the outcomes of our IITG grant. So what we did is we created this project that we call CITE, which stands for the Collaborative Interactive Table for Education. And what it is if you can see the picture there, essentially, so we created the system where users can interact with an on-screen data visualization using tabletop tokens. And this was, the motivation for this was, it was geared at other types of learners, maybe learners that are mostly kinetic or maybe more visual, spatial type of learners. And also we are thinking in our design, we have several features in this system that include learners that might be visually impaired, for example. So we have auditory cues that go along with the visualizations that are on screen, and we include Braille on the tokens themselves. Okay, so the other big motivation for creating this work is because research has really shown that these types of interfaces, which are called often tangible user interfaces, these types of interfaces actually really encourage collaboration. They really encourage collaborative work among groups of people, more so than touch screens, for example. A group around a touch screen is less likely to exhibit the types of collaborative behaviors that groups working with tangible objects do. So that was another big motivation for creating this work. And just a quick, I'm not going to show you this whole video. So this work was based off work that I had done before arriving at SUNY. So you can see the idea here is we have these simple tabletop tokens. We put them on the table to interact with the visualization in different ways. It looks like the video is having some trouble here, but essentially putting something on the table triggers something to happen on the screen is the principle of how this works. So you can see the visualizations change as we move around the tokens. So, so how does this work? So most most of these tangible user interfaces that are out there rely on really specialized hardware. So we decided to move away from that. And in this work, what we did is we created a system that anybody can build. This is why we made a website. So essentially you go to our website, datablocks.org, read the instructions, and if you have any kind of a webcam and just some standard equipment, you can build this yourself. So that our motivation for that was to make it as accessible as possible and to make this a system that anybody could set up in their house or in their classroom. So the way it works, we have a transparent surface where users put their tokens on the transparent tabletop surface. The underside of the tokens are marked with these special markers, and those are read by a camera. And we use this open source software called Reactivision, and that's coupled with this TUIO, also open source, which interprets the markers. And our own software puts that together. So this Reactivision software in TUIO reads and interprets these special markers. Our own software takes that and also inputs whatever data we want to examine and outputs a visualization. So essentially, the visualization that's output is selected by whatever the user puts on the table. So what we did at SUNY Poly is we created another prototype that builds on work that I had done in the past. And what we did is we expanded the number of data visualizations that you can examine with the system. So particularly what we did is we wanted to use data from Gapminder. So I'm just going to open this in a new link. If you're familiar with Gapminder, Gapminder assembles data from all over the world. So there's a lot of data here, and there's a tool here to examine the data. So this is essentially public health data, data on social economic statistics from all over the world. So for example, right here, we have life expectancy versus income for several countries. So we did something similar. We didn't have as many countries because we're just kind of doing this prototype here, but essentially we were inspired by this graph. And what we did is we created a system where you can create one of these graphs and interact with one of these graphs using only tabletop tokens. So people can select the number of countries they want just by sticking a token on the table. So for example, USA, we've got a simple cylinder token. And so we have some accessibility features here, right? We have, we make sure every token has Braille and clear icons for visual learners. So as users put tokens on the table, these points appear on the graph. But users can also select what to plot. So beyond just income and life expectancy, we also included data about CO2 emissions, child mortality, pump price for gasoline, and population density. And so in order to select what data you want plotted on which axis, what we did is our system has these special X value and Y value tokens. And we designed them so that if one of the indicators comes within a close proximity to one of those tokens, then it will put that indicator on the x-axis, for example. So right here in this illustration, the user has selected income to be on the x-axis by bringing those together. and we were careful to design the X value token and the Y value tokens in this intuitive manner so that you can see that they need something to fit inside of them to work, right? So our current prototype displays data for 2002, but our software can be modified to easily show data from another year. And we can also allow users to select the year using, again, a token interaction. We also note that there's a sound component that accompanies this visual display. So as users place their tokens on the table, some sound narration is going to come on. And this is, again, because we're using universal design principles and we want to make this system as inclusive as possible. So our team includes, so myself, Christina Boylan, Nick Lejeune, Michael Riel, Ibi Ussel, and 3 very helpful students. So one thing about this website that we made is we want this to be a resource. So we have this section here that includes instructions and downloads for building the table. So we've included really detailed instructions on how to build a table, list of things you need, a parts list from Amazon you could just click on and order, sort of recommendations on how to get the lighting right in order to detect the tokens. You can download the software. So we've got 2 parts in our software. One is open source Reactivision, which isn't ours, that already existed, and a lot of educators use this. Our own software is right here at this link. Oops, I'll have to fix that. So you can load our software from GitHub. And if you know Python, it's fairly straightforward to modify. If you don't, it's straightforward to use. So the software is specifically made for our prototype, which is looking at the Gapminder data. And this just kind of walks you through, right? When you open the software, it prompts you to place markers on the table. If you don't have any country indicators on the table, you just have a plain graph. And then as you start adding the tokens, the points start appearing on the graph. So users can make their own tokens, or we've also included STL files here on this website where you can download and 3D print the tokens. So if you want to make the tokens yourself, you can print a PDF of our labels right here, which we've included. These are for the different countries, the different data to plot the X and Y value tokens. And of course, you'd have to print out the fiducials, which are the markers underneath, to go along with that. But if not, if you have a 3D printer, we've also offered the markers. This is a top and bottom view. So we have the fiducials in the bottom, and the labels are embossed in our 3D models. And you can go ahead and download those as STL files and print them. So, so we have a system that anybody can go ahead and build here. Unfortunately, because of COVID, we didn't get a chance to test any of this, to do any user testing. We hope that we'll be able to do this with another IITG grant once things get a little better. I'm not sure how to do any of the testing with social distancing, because so much of this is designed around the idea of bringing people together. So I think that is my time. Thank you.
That's pretty cool, Anna. Any questions? See any in the chat? Any questions? Yeah, I think everybody's in agreement. This is really cool. Have you had any conversations with folks who might want to apply this technology to work they're doing with, I'm guessing, people with visual impairments or other, yeah. So I'm curious more about the application piece.
Yeah. Well, we've been in contact. So one of our co-PIs has done extensive research into this and made contact with people in the community, the visually impaired community. And so a lot of our design was really informed by back and forth conversations from people in that community. Just sort of questions about how to, because we're thinking not only people that are blind, but people with visual impairments. So that came in the idea of how to design the icons so that they're very clearly legible, how to label the countries so it's not so bulky. We just use a 2-letter code in each of the country labels and the flags. So we haven't had specific conversation because COVID hit, and so everything just sort of, I don't know, discontinued after that. But a lot of this design was directly informed by people in that community that we spoke to.
Great. Well, thank you so much, everybody today. I mean, I'm blown away by what you all accomplished. And even with the stresses of the semester, with the COVID, with the pandemic, great work, everyone. I'm going to pop in the chat just a link to the website again, just because that's where we'll post the recording for today's website, for today's webinar. And we will have more of these, but we're going to take the summer off, give everybody a little webinar, Zoom break from this sort of thing. You might be doing other things in Zoom anyway. And we'll have about 4 more of these in September. So stay tuned for that. And I'm just going to ask everybody to just give everybody a round of applause, either virtually or in your chat room there. And again, thank you all so much. Have a great rest of your summer. And thanks again for sharing.